I'm Dr. Jim Lockard, and we are here to interview Rev Dr. Charles Geddes. We're grateful to have this opportunity to interview and record you for the Science of Mind Archives and Library so we can share your history and wisdom with the Science of Mind community and the world at large.
I'll keep this very brief. I was born in Denver, Colorado, until I was about 16 years old, and then moved to Los Angeles. I have one beloved sibling that is 11 years older than myself, my sister Edie. And my background of origin, just recently did a full DNA to really get who am I, why am I? And predominantly British and Irish and Northern European. And just realizing that the true origin of all of us is stardust. So sometimes the whole reality of our Earth base is misleading because we're so much more. And so that's the story of my true background. It's galactic, as says all of us.
And what year were you born?
1941.
So what are some of your life experiences that had a significant impact on you prior to coming into the Science of Mind teaching?
Coming out of high school and shortly thereafter, making the choice to commit to be with my sister and her 4 children because she was divorcing. And I made a life choice at that time to be a part of their early years and help raise them. So that was for a period of almost a decade. So my 20s were really permeated with my love and regard for my family and making choices that were about taking care of them, which was working at times 2 jobs. But I cherish that because that gave me an honor and privilege that has been with me my whole life.
Wonderful. So how were you introduced to the Science of Mind, and when was that?
Introduced to the Science of Mind out of the necessity of working 2 jobs, and I went to bartending school. And as a way and means of an extra job. And the first place that I ever worked, the bartender there became the only significant other in my life. And he was in Science of Mind at the time at the Glendale Religious Science Church. And he invited me to attend, and I, with great reluctance, I would not go to church because I was so turned off of church, but I said, okay, I'll go to one of your classes. And that changed my life.
And what year was that you started attending that class?
Probably about 1967.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who did you study with, and who were your main teachers?
I had the great honor to be studying with Dr. Laura Holman, who was the founder of the Glendale Church, and a magnificent church beyond defining. It's structurally, architecturally beautiful. The same architect that designed the Redondo Beach Church, Howard Van Heuken, was the architect for both Redondo Beach and for Glendale, and a breathtaking church. And so Dr. Laura Holman, her associate pastor, Reverend Geneva Harmon, were my primary teachers. And then ultimately, my 4th year ministerial class then, which was a year, was with Dr. Earl Barnum, who had also studied with Dr. Laura. The great thing about Dr. Laura, she was a mystic. This was about presence. And Dr. Laura would always speak about and open her prayers and Sundays with beloved presence. And that moved me so much because she was speaking about aligning to, tapping into presence and to the infinite, to that field of knowledge that's available through presence. And this was not about channeling personalities. This was about opening to receive the divine influx of presence and all the great minds that have ever been, and tapping into the energy source of them. And I loved that. So that's what brought me into the teaching.
Okay. How did Science of Mind change your life? And was there one specific event or demonstration that was a turning point for you to move deeper into the teaching?
Well, Science of Mind did change my life because it came at a time that there was such struggle within me on so many levels, and overwhelm of taking care of family and the reality of what that took, demand, struggling with sexual identity that took actually decades to finally come to be at peace with. But that coming into this teaching was the first time that anything made sense to me. I had a very mixed background in my early years, so far as a little this, a little that, little Baptist, little Methodist, little Presbyterian, little Calvary temple, that in which which everybody pleased to know I was saved at about 10 years old. So I'm good. But the magnitude of those first couple of classes of Science of Mind with Dr. Holman, and I went to the second class on my own. My beloved friend and significant other for a few years, David, brought me to the first class. I went to the second class on my own, and I got lost. This was in Glendale and on Chevy Chase, and that's a winding street, and it was a foggy night. And this is a true story. And I got really lost. And the week before, Dr. Holman was speaking about the fact that there was going to be a star up on the hill that people could see from a distance. It was not up there that week, but she said, "You're going to see it." And I got hopelessly lost, and I drove over to the side of the road and prayed, because I had my own way of prayer from an early child. I spoke to God, and that's why when Dr. Laura spoke about presence, it was, oh wow, I've really been speaking to something that's for real and not imagined. And so I spoke to my angels and said, look, if this is something that I'm supposed to be giving my life to, then the way is revealed here. And if not, I just want to find my way back home. Thank you. And no sooner had I said that, and the fog was clearing, and that star was up on the hill.
Oh my.
It was like, whoops.
Okay,
All right.
that's a moment.
This is a moment. This is something I am supposed to be giving my life to. And there was a benefactor, and it wasn't my significant other, but there was a benefactor that knew my situation and paid for my first 2 years of classes that I could not have paid. So memories coming back of the impact of that, and presence and love and angels being a part of why I'm here today.
When did you become a practitioner?
Probably about 1969. Practitioner, 1971 minister, thereabouts, and being licensed as a minister in 1971 officially.
Okay. Where did you serve as a practitioner before you became a minister? Was that at Glendale?
That was in the Glendale Center, and at that time, Dr. Laura had stepped down, and Dr. Leo Fishback was the senior pastor.
Before we move away from that, Dr. Laura had been president of Religious Science International, right?
Yeah, she was the first woman president of IARSC.
Right.
When I came in, it was the International Association of Religious Science Churches.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember when they did honored all the presidents, her picture was up there.
Absolutely.
She and Arlene Bump were the only two females. Where did you serve as a minister? Let's do a quick chronology.
First center was Tucson, Arizona. And the story there, because it's a beautiful one, I was still in ministerial class with Dr. Earl Barnum And I was, through a friend in Glendale, invited to speak in Tucson. And Dr. Claudine Whitaker, who had retired out of Chicago, came to Tucson and started the study group and was building it up to church status, but she made her transition. And so the group was wanting to bring in a new minister to bring it fully into a church status. So I was invited to speak, still in my fourth year class. And at 29 years old, I had never been on a plane before, which was, again, my life wasn't about being able to travel. And so the excitement of that, and that first Sunday I spoke, I never dreamed that I would be going there to be the minister. It was like, wow, what a great opportunity. And the very first Sunday, the board took me out and said, would you be our minister? I said, well, I haven't even completed my fourth year. That's okay. We'll fly you back every month. You could maybe come and stay a couple of weeks in the summer, and we'll wait for you. And they waited for me. Mm-hmm. So my first center was in Tucson, Arizona, and I was there for 11 years. And then moved to Los Angeles, where a cathartic soul journey was about to occur. Journey is about ongoing cathartic soul journeys of change. And this was a new period of exploration for me. And I was on staff with the Inglewood Center with Dr. Elizabeth Marshall for many years there. But I again took on family. One of my nieces was divorcing, so I brought her into my life and helped her and her 3 children for several years. And but in the meantime, involved with Inglewood, and then ultimately deciding to take an opportunity in Montebello at the Montebello Church of Religious Science. And that was an amazing 11 years because that church existed as a wedding chapel and also as a church.
And when did you go to Montebello?
That probably was 1995, thereabouts, 1995 to before I came to Fort Lauderdale. And I have performed over 1,300 weddings. I think I would hold a record for religious science ministers.
Probably, yeah.
Except outside of Las Vegas.
Yeah. Okay, and then you were in Montebello for 11 years?
11 years.
Until about 2006 or so?
Yes, and then the opportunity to come and be in co-pastorship with Dr. Arlene Bump at the Center for Spiritual Living here in Fort Lauderdale. And 2 years, again, of great opportunities of deepening my soul and growing. And I can never be in gratitude sufficiently to Dr. Arlene for that privilege, because it brought me here. And it ultimately led me to be creating what is now my call, Bridges of Wellness, which I stand as an independent nonprofit. And the work that I'm doing here through this is the most creative and wonderful that I've ever done in all my years of ministry.
Okay. Have you ever taught a ministerial class?
Yes, I've taught a ministerial class in Tucson. Out of that class, Dr. James Golden and Helen Street, and actually, clarification, Helen Street, Dr. James Golden and Dr. Andrea Acevedo, their practitioner curriculum, and then they did have fourth year from other teachers.
Okay.
But very thrilled with that. Helen Street was a shining star in Religious Science International for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I will never be able to honor sufficiently her beauty and love, because she made a great impact upon many lives.
Yes, including my wife, Dorian.
and so to know that Helen was birthed literally out of Tucson. And
Interesting. I didn't know that.
I don't have a long list of ministers, but looking at that one and looking at the great work that ultimately Dr. James and Dr. Andrea did, there's some good blessings there that I had such privilege to have them as students.
Wonderful. In what ways have you been involved in any of the larger organizational New Thought organizations, including RSI or United or AGNT or INTA or any of those? Have you done any? I know you did. I can't think of the name of the piece. It's for the ministers that are.
Well, the Phoenix Bridge.
Phoenix Bridge, yes.
Yes, I did create the Phoenix Bridge for Religious Science International, and the Phoenix Bridge emerged out of a quantum need to recognize that licensed ministers, that when they were moving through transitions or changes, a way and the means to create a supportive, literal bridge for them in between post or opportunities, and also to be with them in a time of counsel and treatment, because ministry is not necessarily for everyone. And clearly, many found that out in the early process of it, that there was another path and way for them. So the Phoenix Bridge was created out of that intention. I did have a part in the focus ministries as they took hold in Religious Science International, being a part of how we developed that to be able to accommodate an independent work and ministry. And other things that I did in Los Angeles, I created the first gathering of practitioners from United, from International and Independent, and even opened it up to Unity centers. And that group started with about 8 of us and wound up, when I left officially in about 2005, 2006, that yearly and annual gathering was drawing about 125 to 150 people. So I feel wonderful about that.
You were on the RSI board.
I was on the RSI board, and I was ethics chair. Not really a fun chair to have, but one with great value and importance. And I cherish the years that I served with everyone of that board. A great privilege.
And it was the early 2000s. It was a remarkable time in the organization.
Yes, it was.
You did mention the practitioner gathering that was
right.
interfaith, at least within New Thought.
Yes.
Any other experiences?
Yes. When I first came to Tucson, I connected with the United Church there and with the Unity Church. And that was at a point in time in the 70s when there was really great division between United and International. And very unpleasant, but I decided to ignore that. And for about 3 years, we had a metaphysical Easter sunrise service together between the United and Unity and International. And I feel great that I accomplished that for at least 3 years.
Well, that's wonderful.
And I'm currently, right now, I'm just newly involved with an interfaith community group here in Fort Lauderdale. And we're going to have, on March 26th, One World Family, a gathering to have all of the different key faiths and religions represented in prayer. And that's going to be at one of the major parks here Sunday afternoon, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that. And
great.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit now about your current ministry, Bridges of Wellness.
Bridges of Wellness. Obviously, I have a thing about bridges.
Yeah.
I think that it's so important that we've heard this as a cliche, but it's so true, that the greatest bridge of all is from the mind to the heart. But that the ultimate reality is more than that. It must be from heart to heart, because that's what we're called to be in service. So when I stepped out of the Centers for Spiritual Living in Fort Lauderdale, I was reinventing my life at that time. And I could have easily, have candidated and gone to another church. And the first thing that would come to mind when I would think of that was, well, why would I do that? And I know it's supposed to be inspiring everybody, but I think we have to be very honest in our reflection, because I knew that I was ready for a change. And so I began to look at how that would occur. And I did, through great support and help, create a new nonprofit organization called Bridges of Wellness that was very broad in its scope. It definitely had its spiritual component without question, but it was broad enough to give me the freedom to explore what Bridges was ultimately going to be. And initially, it started out as an aftercare recovery program. And to one of the most brilliant people in my life, having met him in Fort Lauderdale here, who created that program. But ultimately, we realized, no, that's really not what Bridges is to be about. And so, again, moving forward. And finally, I would say that in the past 2 years, it's really clear what Bridges is. Yes, we are a spiritual center. We are independent. I'm aligned right now to the Emerson Theological Institute for our educational curriculums, but that, and I just last year began doing Sunday mornings again. I had not done Sunday mornings for about 8 years, and stepping back into that. So Bridges of Wellness right now, we've really come to a simplicity of defining what we are. And we are a spiritual community that is celebrating the divinity in absolutely everyone. And we look for programming that supports that cause of wellness on multi-levels, body, mind, and spirit. And that the ultimate reality is that we're building bridges heart to heart. We want to have meaningful change in people's lives because they're willing to do the inner work. And what I feel sometimes in the overall view is that it has to be much deeper and more than Sundays. Singular Sundays doesn't work anymore. There has to be the commitment of people to do that inner processing and healing. So the programs that we bring in are in depth for that. And we have on Sundays, it's an interchange of dialogue. So it's not just about a focus talk. It's about how does that impact you? What are your thoughts about this? What are your questions about this? And we do, of course, meditation, but the key is that they have an experience that has involved them in what occurs here on Sunday and encourages them to do the deeper work through our programs. We have healing programs like Reiki. We bring in other energy healings. We do meditation. We do what's called a family constellation from time to time, which is a wonderful programming of doing deep, authentic work, healing from our ancestries. Mm-hmm. And we do the Ho'oponopono practice here, which is the Hawaiian forgiveness practice. We bring all of that in so that people have choice as to, hey, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to invest in this, but this is what we're about here at Bridges.
Wonderful, thank you. Can you describe for your audience here what are your current spiritual practices?
Living as presence and having fun doing it and making it simple. I don't think spiritual practice has to be complicated. I think it has to be that you're in a consistent inner dialogue with that presence, and that you recognize the difference between that presence and our ego self, and that you not only yourself practice on realizing that, but offering the tools for people to know the difference. And there's so much work that's out there about how to clear the ego voice and all the voices, it's in the plural, that exist in the race mind, race consciousness, and come to the simplicity and the purity. I love that the ultimate reality, I just love this. that we must step out of our stories. And even though stories of empowerment have a great value, which they do, but most are stuck in stories that have minimal value or actually are devaluing. And so everything that we do must be about, what's the story I'm carrying forward today? What's the story I'm carrying forward about Charles today? And is it one that exudes a sense of presence, of joy, of love, of compassion, of forgiveness? That's the story. Ultimately, what I want to reach, and when I step across, when I step out of this form, I want to be in that conscious awareness that there's no stories. There's only the pure, unconditional love of presence. And I can't do that 24/7 here, but I can do everything to make an investment to that for myself and for others. So taking sacred walks, listening compassionately to other people, getting out of my need to impact anyone other than be presence for everyone, to be presence for everyone and be present for everyone. And that's the greatest thing of counseling, is that you offer people safety, to be heard, to be loved unconditionally, and to be encouraged to know there's a new story for you today. There's a new story. You can find it. And that's what we're here for.
Thank you. Beautifully put. Do you believe that religious science and the science of mind have had on the world so far?
I think it's so important that we, as organizations of religious science, science of mind, independence, metaphysical, however we're defining it, that this teaching is already all over the world. And that the great vision of Ernest Holmes has already been realized. So that it's not about looking at our numbers as a point of success. It's realizing that this teaching has found its way out of us. Because I think teachings find their way in a manner that will be impacting greater audiences, and that's vital for us to know. So that the great work that all of the transcendentalists and the early founders and the Fillmores and Nona Brooks and there's so many, all of those that were a part of New Thought, of course, Ernest Holmes, that this teaching has blossomed. And that what's very vital for us to do is to stay willing to expand ourselves and look at new ways of doing our churches. More than ever, there has to be a sense of the impact we're having in the community, not just on people wanting to know what science of mind is about, but on the community and how we are touching lives outside of the realm of our particular center.
Thank you very much. Is there any final statement you would like to make to those that may or will be viewing this video now or in the future? Just parting words.
I'm having such joy currently in teaching the Foundations class, which is really the Science of Mind text. And there's a wonderful book that Dr. Marilyn Leo wrote in his company about Ernest Holmes. And what a presence he was. And what I love is in reading that book to realizing that this was a very simple, not complex man. This was a man whose heart was permeated with a desire to touch other lives in ways that it would change them forever. And that opening the doors and the way for people to feel safe and loved unconditionally for who they were, exactly where they were, but that change can happen. And change could happen by how we see ourselves differently. And in teaching this class and with the enthusiasm that I have from the students that are in the class, first of all, I'm the greatest student of all because our class is almost constant dialogue. And it's not about stories. It's about inquiry. It's about inquiry, and that's what Ernest Holmes wanted. He wanted us to be excited about inquiry. And for me, the science of mind was the platform in which we spring forward to unlimited inquiry and possibilities. It wasn't about a teaching that we've got it, here it is, this is it, stand upon it. It was that here's the launch pad. Here's the launch pad for ongoing awareness and discovery. And if we stay in the creative mode and bring more young people in that are excited about that, they're excited about, there's more to it than what we've known. How do we find that? How do we explore that? And the youth are our future. But the other thing that's our future too, and I want to say this to all the older ministers, including myself, I'm my future. We're our future. We're living longer than ever before. So let's build the bridges between the older and the younger and all, and step into a new excitement about how this teaching can grow, not by means of, well, our organization now has this number. It's rather, we are doing inner work that is in changing lives, and maybe there's going to be a life that we impact that has changed hundreds of thousands because our energy has been upon the one and not all, but upon the one that changes the lives of thousands of people, because that's what we were there for, to move that one heart, that one life. And out of that, many, many are touched in the future.
Thank you very much. Dr. Charles Geddes, thank you so much for your time and generosity and sharing your life experiences with us.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Leo, founder of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful interview with this very special, wise sage person. They've been around for quite a while. If you value these interviews, we invite you to show your generosity by making a donation or joining as a member of the Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation. Thank you for watching.